What if the person draining your energy isn't destroying you, but feeding on you? And what if you've been giving them exactly what they need? Ever wondered why one toxic person seems impossible to escape, no matter how many boundaries you set? There's a reason, and it's more psychological than personal. What if the real power wasn't in changing them, but in changing something far more important, your response? Someone in your life drains your energy every single time you interact with them. They leave you exhausted, frustrated, questioning your own judgment. You've tried everything: setting boundaries, explaining yourself clearly, confronting the issue directly, even pulling away. But every attempt either gets ignored, twisted, turned into drama, or somehow they just manage to find their way back into your life. Nothing seems to work. They keep returning, keep taking, keep draining you, and you're tired of fighting a battle that never ends. Here's the truth nobody tells you. You cannot change toxic people. You can't argue them into awareness. You can't explain them into empathy. You can't teach them respect if they have no intention of giving it. Because toxic people don't want to change. They want what you're giving them: your emotional energy, your attention, your reactions. That's the fuel they feed on. And as long as you keep providing that fuel, no matter how unintentionally, they'll keep coming back for more. But there is something you can fully control: your internal world, not the mu. Your responses, your reactions, your emotional energy. When you change these 7 specific things, something interesting happens. Toxic people start distancing themselves naturally. Not because you pushed them away, but because you stopped feeding the behaviors that kept them attached. Marcus Aurelius said it best: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Their behavior is external. Your response is internal. And when you master that difference, everything changes. Today, we uncover 7 principles that make toxic people fade out of your life without drama, without confrontation, without needing to explain a single thing. And principle number 4. That's the one most people get completely wrong. They think it protects them. But it actually gives toxic people exactly what they want. By the end of this page, you'll know precisely how to respond the next time someone toxic tries their usual tactics, and you'll watch their power disappear the moment those tactics stop working. If you're exhausted from people who drain you no matter what you do, these 7 principles will change everything. And if you want more Stoic wisdom that actually protects your peace and mental clarity, make sure you subscribe. Principle 1. Stop giving them emotional reactions. Toxic people feed on your emotional reactions. Your anger, your frustration, your defensiveness, your hurt feelings. Those reactions are the reward they're chasing. When they provoke you and you react, they win. They get drama, attention, and proof that they matter enough to affect you. Your emotional engagement is the oxygen that keeps toxic behavior alive. Remove the oxygen and the fire dies. They purposely create situations engineered to provoke you, say things designed to make you angry, do things to make you feel cornered, push buttons they know will trigger you. Not because they hate you, but because your reaction feeds them. When you stop reacting emotionally, you cut off their oxygen supply. And a fire can't burn without oxygen. I once watched someone deal with a colleague who made inflammatory comments every single day. At first, he would argue back, get visibly angry, defend himself, try to prove the colleague wrong. And every time, the colleague seemed more energized. like the conflict was giving him strength. He learned something powerful in that moment when he stopped feeding the fire. The flames began to die. At first, the colleague thrived on the conflict. He finally realized the arguing was the reward all along. So he made a different choice. He stopped reacting emotionally. The next time the colleague threw out another inflammatory comment, he stayed completely calm. No tension, no defense. Just a simple, steady response, "I see." Then he quietly returned to his work. The colleague tried again. A bigger provocation this time, sharper and more pointed almost, as if he was trying to wake the old version of him. But the response stayed the same, interesting. No emotion, no engagement, no spark to grab onto. For 3 long days, the colleague escalated. More dramatic comments, more obvious attempts to trigger him, more desperate pushes to get the emotional reaction he depended on. And for 3 days, he stayed neutral, steady as a rock against the waves. By day 4, something changed. The colleague gave up completely. He moved on to someone more reactive, someone who would provide the emotional engagement he was starving for. This is what true emotional neutrality looks like. Not cold, not hostile, just calm, unmoved, detached, a brief acknowledgement without stepping into the emotional arena. "Okay, I hear you. Got it." No explanations. No justifications. No emotional display, just flat, steady, neutrality-like, responding to a weather report. There's no personal stake in it, no emotional color. You simply hear it and move on. And yes, they will escalate at first. It's guaranteed. They're testing, you testing whether this new calm is real or just temporary. They may say outrageous things, push harder, try to provoke bigger reactions. It's their last attempt to drag you back into the old pattern. This is the moment that matters most. If you stay neutral through the escalation, they learn it's permanent. React even once, and you teach them exactly what to do next time. Push harder. Epictetus taught, you control your responses completely, not external events. Their provocation is external, outside your control. Your reaction is internal, fully in your control. Marcus Aurelius lived this daily. He visualized staying calm before difficult interactions. He prepared his response internally long before the moment arrived. So, when provocation finally came, it couldn't move him because he had already decided his state of mind in advance. Practice simple, neutral phrases now before you need them. "I understand." "Interesting." "Okay." "I see," said with complete emotional flatness, no sarcasm. No edge, just genuine neutrality. Your calm becomes your power. Removing emotional reactions starves their behavior. But principle 2 goes deeper. It's not just about your emotions, but about your words. Principle 2. Stop explaining and justifying yourself. Toxic people use your explanations as ammunition. Every justification you offer becomes material for them to dissect, holes to poke, motives to question, words to twist. And once they twist them, they make you explain again, and again, and again. It becomes an endless, exhausting cycle where you're constantly defending your choices. Every explanation sends a silent message. I care what you think. I need your approval. Your opinion matters to me. And that is the engagement they want. Remove the explanations, and the conversation collapses. You think if you explain clearly enough, they'll understand. You think if you justify long enough, they'll finally accept it. But that's not how this works. They don't want to understand. They want the interaction. They want the power of making you justify yourself. Your explanation isn't information to them, it's entertainment. Stop providing it. I know someone who was constantly criticized by a family member about life choices, career, relationships, even where they lived. Every decision was questioned, and every time they spent hours explaining, defending, laying out logical reasoning in detail. But the family member always found flaws, always had better alternatives, always asked more questions, always pulled them back into defense mode. It was a cycle with no end. Until one day, they stopped explaining. Family member: why are you doing this? Response: I've decided this is right for me. No elaboration, no justification. Family member: but that doesn't make sense. Explain why. He learned that the real shift began the moment he stopped explaining himself, because silence was the one response to the other person couldn't twist or use against him. When he finally answered with, "I've made my decision," period, everything changed. The family member kept pushing for weeks, fishing for explanations, trying to pry open the old pattern. But he didn't give in. No extra words, no reasoning, no emotional debate. Eventually, the questions stopped. The family member either accepted the decisions or didn't. Either way, it was no longer his burden to carry, because the explaining had been the real trap all along. So what does no explanation actually look like? It looks like simple, clear statements complete on their own, without any reasoning attached. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. I've decided not to. No lengthy explanation of why. No list of reasons. No openings for debate. Just brief, final, complete statements that close the door immediately. You feel compelled to explain because you're reasonable. You want the other person to understand you, to see that you have good reasons, to know you've thought things through. You believe that, if you explain well enough, they'll finally respect your choice. But here's the truth. Reasonable people respect boundaries without demanding explanations. And unreasonable people will never be satisfied, no matter how perfectly you explain. Your explanations aren't helping. They're hurting you. They're keeping you stuck in an exhausting cycle of justification. Marcus Aurelius never felt obligated to justify every decision. Seneca wrote, "Explaining to those who refuse to understand is throwing pearls before swine." And Epictetus reminded us, "You know your reasons." That is enough. You don't need their approval to live according to your values. So when they demand an explanation, repeat your decision calmly and firmly. "I'm not doing that." They push. "Why not?" "Give me one good reason." Your response, "I've decided." They escalate again. "You need to explain yourself." "You know, I don't." A broken record response. No justification. No extra material for them to attack. Because you can't argue with a decision someone refuses to defend. Eventually, they stop asking questions you refuse to answer. And if you've ever stopped explaining yourself to someone who constantly demanded justification, you know the feeling. The moment they finally stop asking is the moment you feel free. If you've lived through that shift, comment "no more justifying" below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Stop explaining yourself, but Principle 3 goes further. It's about your time. Principle 3. Become selectively unavailable. Toxic people assume unlimited access to your time and energy. They call whenever they want and expect an instant answer. They show up unannounced and assume you'll welcome them. They make last-minute demands and expect you to drop everything. This constant availability is what enables their behavior. They drain you because they can reach you whenever they want, limit their access, and you limit their ability to affect you. Your presence is not a right they're entitled to. It's a privilege you choose to give. Start treating it that way. Physical distance matters. Time distance matters. If they can't access you, they can't drain you. If the interaction never happens, the manipulation can't take place. Every moment they have access to you is an opportunity to take from you. Reduce the opportunities, and you reduce the taking. It's simple mathematics of emotional protection. I watched someone deal with a friend who was constantly draining. This friend assumed total availability, calling at any hour and expecting an immediate reply, dropping by without warning and expecting a warm welcome, making last-minute demands and assuming they would always say yes. And the person, feeling obligated, stayed endlessly accessible, always available, always responsive, and constantly exhausted. He discovered that once he guarded his time, everything else fell into place. Boundaries became signals, not apologies. Finally, he began practicing selective unavailability. He stopped answering every call the instant it rang. Let some calls go to voicemail. He replied when it was convenient for him, not on the caller's schedule. He started saying no to spontaneous visits with a brief, final line. "I'm not available today." No explanation. No defense. At first, the friend was offended and pushed back. "You never answer anymore." And he simply replied, "I respond when I'm available." The friend pleaded. "But I need you," he answered calmly. "I understand you needed me then. I wasn't available." No guilt. No justification. Just fact. Within a month, the friend adjusted. He stopped expecting instant access. Their interactions became less frequent, but also far more manageable. Oddly, the relationship improved once proper distance was in place. Respect and boundaries restored the balance. So what does selective unavailability look like in practice? Not answering every call or text immediately. Having specific blocks of time when you're unreachable. Saying no to last-minute demands without offering a running commentary about your schedule. "I'm busy" is sufficient. They don't need to know whether you're swamped with work or deliberately doing nothing. That still counts. Your time is yours to allocate. You've been overly available because you don't want to seem rude or unkind. You fear their reaction to boundaries. You feel guilty saying no. But they trained you to be constantly accessible, and that training benefits them, not you. It's time to retrain. Your availability is a choice you make, not a right they possess. Seneca warned that time is the one truly non-renewable resource. Once it's gone, you can never get it back. Guard it more carefully than money, more carefully than possessions. Marcus Aurelius decided deliberately who deserved his time. He didn't hand it to whoever clamored the loudest. Epictetus taught that you control your schedule. External demands control you only if you allow them to. Start small. Don't reply the instant they message next time. Wait. Respond when you're ready, not when they demand it. If they call, say you're busy and call back later, or don't call back at all. If they want to meet, tell them you're not free. That doesn't work for me. No run-through of your calendar to prove you're busy. A simple, closed response is enough. Watch what happens when you stop being endlessly accessible. Either they adapt to your real availability, or they move on to someone more available. Either outcome protects your energy, control your availability. But here's where most people get it wrong. Principle 4 is counterintuitive to many. Principle 4. Stop defending yourself when they attack. When someone attacks, your instinct is to defend. Prove them wrong. Correct their misread. Explain why the criticism is unfair. But that defense is exactly what they want. Your rebuttal shows the attack landed. It proves you're affected, gives them more material to pick apart, and keeps the interaction alive. Non-defense deflates the attack. No defense means nothing to argue against. The attack falls flat, and the conversation often ends. Most people think defending themselves is necessary. How else will others know the truth? But here's the catch. Toxic people aren't attacking because they're confused. They're attacking to produce a reaction. Your defense is the reaction. I know someone who had a chronically critical parent who attacked every life choice, career, relationships, where they lived. They would spend hours defending, explaining their reasoning, offering proof their choices made sense. The parent would shred the explanations, find new angles to attack, and demand more justification. It became an endless loop of attack and defense, both exhausted, neither satisfied. Eventually, the person realized the defense itself was the problem. The next attack came. You're making terrible decisions with your life. In the past, their automatic reaction was always to defend, long explanations, detailed reasoning, trying to prove they were right. But now, the response became only one simple sentence. I understand you think that, and nothing more. No justification, no argument. The parent tried to push further. You're going to regret all of this one day. And the response was simply, maybe. Still no defense. No emotional reaction. No fuel for the argument. And eventually, the parent fell silent. The attack had been engineered to provoke a defensive response. But when there was no defense to engage with, it collapsed instantly. With no battlefield, the fight dissolved on its own. In the end, the parent stopped attacking entirely. There's no reward in attacking someone who refuses to fight back. So what does non-defense actually look like? It's simple acknowledgement without agreement. I hear you, noted. Okay, you acknowledge they spoke, but you don't validate their claims. You don't argue, don't correct, don't prove anything. You receive the words but remain unmoved, like rain hitting a rock. The rock doesn't argue with the rain. It doesn't explain why the rain is wrong. It simply stays unchanged. You feel the urge to defend because you want them to know the truth about you. You want to correct their wrong impressions. You want to show you're not what they accuse you of being. But your character doesn't need verbal defense. Marcus Aurelius didn't run around correcting every misunderstanding. Epictetus taught that actions prove character. Words defending it only weaken it. Seneca knew that people who truly know you never require a defense. And people trying to manipulate you will never accept your defense anyway. When they attack, you're so selfish. You respond, I understand you feel that way. They escalate. You don't care about anyone but yourself. You reply, okay. Still no defense. They get frustrated. Aren't you going to defend yourself? And you say, no, and that's it. The attack requires your defense to survive. Without it, the attack collapses under its own emptiness. They're swinging at thin air, and eventually, they stop. The first time you don't defend yourself will feel wrong. You'll want to argue, to explain, to protect your image, bite your tongue and stay neutral. They will escalate at first, trying to drag you back into the old dynamic. This is the critical moment. If you defend even once, you teach them, just push harder and I'll react. But if you stay calm and neutral, they learn a new rule. Attacking you is pointless. If you've ever stopped defending yourself against someone and watched them give up once they got no reaction, you know how freeing that moment is. But the journey isn't finished. The final 3 principles complete your protection from toxic people permanently. And principle 5 is about expectations. Principle 5, stop expecting them to change. You keep hoping. Maybe this time they'll be different. Maybe now they'll understand. Maybe they'll finally respect my boundaries. But you end up disappointed again and again. They're showing you exactly who they are. You're just refusing to accept it. Expectations keep you trapped in cycles of pain. Expectations create vulnerability. They know you're hoping, and they use that hope to manipulate you. I'll change this time, I promise. You've heard it before. You'll hear it again. And every time, you hope the promise is real. But it's not the promise that's real. It's the pattern. Your hope is the leverage they use to control you. When you remove the hope, you remove their power. I know someone with an unreliable sibling who made endless promises, then broke every single one. Each time they'd apologize, swear they'd change, vow to do better. And each time the person believed them, gave another chance, and ended up disappointed when the sibling repeated the same old behavior, exactly as before. After years trapped in cycles of hope and disappointment, this person finally accepted that this is exactly who their sibling is. They stopped expecting reliability or change. They started making their own plans without depending on their sibling. When the sibling flaked, there was no disappointment, no anger, no surprise. Everything happened as expected, and they adjusted accordingly. No emotional investment in the sibling being someone they are not. Once expectations aligned with reality, the relationship became manageable, and they still cared for their sibling, but in a realistic way. So what does acceptance look like? It means understanding that they will continue their toxic patterns, use the same manipulation tactics, ignore boundaries, and take advantage whenever possible. That is who they are. Plan accordingly. Don't share sensitive information that could be weaponized. Don't rely on them for anything important. Don't expect support they won't provide. Don't hope for understanding that will never come. Protect yourself based on their actual patterns, not your wishes about who they might be. We keep hoping because we want to believe people can change. Remember those rare good moments. Think your influence matters. Think that this time their promise is real. All of this keeps you stuck in a cycle of hope and disappointment. They might change someday, but it's not your job to wait around or keep giving chances. Your job is to protect yourself from who they are right now. Marcus Aurelius taught. Expect people to be exactly who they show themselves to be, not who you wish they were. Epictetus said, "Don't demand figs from olive trees. Accept the nature of things." Seneca knew that peace comes from accepting reality as it is, not wishing it were different. Fighting the reality of who someone is causes your suffering, not their behavior, but your resistance to acceptance does. When you truly accept who they are, their behavior stops surprising you and stops hurting you. You planned for it, expected it, and protected yourself accordingly. They do their predictable thing, and you remain unmoved because you no longer hope for something different. You are dealing with reality. Reality is manageable. Hoping in the face of consistent contrary evidence is torment. Accept who they are, But Principle 6 is about understanding. Principle 6. Stop trying to make them understand you. You keep explaining, trying to make them see your perspective, believing that if they truly understood, they would stop their behavior. Explanation after explanation, hours of conversations, attempting to make them see why boundaries matter, how their actions affect you, what you need to feel safe and respected, yet they never understand. Or they seem to understand and immediately do the same thing again. Understanding is not the issue. They either understand perfectly and don't care, or they are incapable of understanding and never will. Either way, trying is exhausting and a waste of your energy. Your attempts to be understood give them exactly what they want. Your time, your attention, your emotional investment. Those long conversations where you explain yourself. That's engagement. They don't need to understand you. They need you to keep trying. That's the game. Your pursuit of their understanding keeps you connected to them. Stop pursuing it, and the connection breaks. I watched someone spend months explaining boundaries to a toxic person. Detailed explanations of why the boundaries were necessary, which behaviors crossed the line, what they needed to feel safe and respected, hours and hours of conversation, and the toxic person would immediately repeat the same behaviors. The toxic person would nod along, pretend to understand, even ask follow-up questions as if they genuinely cared. But the moment the conversation ended, they would immediately violate the exact same boundaries again. The person on the receiving end was confused and hurt. I explained everything so clearly. Why don't they get it? Eventually, they realized the truth. The toxic person got it perfectly. They understood every word, they just didn't care. Understanding was never the missing piece. Respect was so. They stopped trying to make the toxic person understand. Instead, they simply enforced boundaries without long explanations. That doesn't work for me. No more exhausting sessions of explaining. No more hoping that understanding would magically lead to change. Just, this is the boundary. It's not negotiable. No extra details. No emotional labor. What does this look like in practice? It means no more long conversations where you explain why you need what you need. No more trying to convince them to see your side. No more hoping they'll finally understand and behave differently. You simply state your boundary or your decision, and that's the end of the discussion. When they push for more understanding, "But I don't understand why you're like this," you respond, "I know," and nothing follows. They try again. "Help me understand." You calmly answer, "I've said what I needed to say." No explaining, no repeating, no pleading. You keep trying because you believe understanding leads to change. But it doesn't, not with people who lack respect or the capacity to grow. What you're really seeking is validation from someone who will never give it. You want them to see that you're reasonable, hoping they'll approve of your choices. But all of that keeps you trapped, chasing something they're incapable of offering. Marcus Aurelius knew that not everyone will understand you, and that this is perfectly okay. Epictetus taught, "You understand yourself. That is enough. Your reasons don't require their validation." Seneca warned about casting pearls before swine. Some people are either incapable of understanding what you're offering, or simply don't want to. Either way, it's not your responsibility to force clarity into someone who resists it. So when they demand understanding, "Why can't you explain this to me?" you answer, "I've explained before," and you refuse to repeat it. They push harder, "You're not making sense." You reply, unmoved, that's okay, because your clarity doesn't depend on their comprehension. Your boundaries don't require their approval, and your decisions don't need their permission. You know your reasons. That alone is enough. Stop seeking understanding from those who weaponize your effort to explain, and that leads directly into Principle 7, the next layer of real emotional freedom. Principle 7. Stop making their problems your problems. They drag chaos into every interaction, crisis, drama, emergency, and you absorb it, take it on, try to fix it. Their emotional storm becomes your burden, your stress, your emergency. And that's exactly what they want. Someone to carry the weight they refuse to shoulder themselves. But your job isn't to solve their life. Your job is to live yours. Clear separation. Their problem stays theirs. Your peace stays yours. You cannot be drained by problems you refuse to pick up. Their crisis, without your participation, remains entirely theirs. They have to handle it. They must find someone else to unload on, or actually deal with it themselves. Any outcome that doesn't involve you carrying their emotional weight is acceptable. You are not responsible for their chaos. I know someone who had a friend living in non-stop crisis every single day, something new. Work, drama, relationship emergencies, financial disasters, health scares. They would call in a panic, demanding immediate help, and the person would drop everything, absorbing their friend's stress, trying desperately to fix each crisis. Their own life was constantly disrupted, constantly drained. They were exhausted from carrying someone else's emotional weight on top of their own, until one day, they finally realized the truth. The friend wasn't looking for solutions. They were looking for someone to dump the chaos onto, someone to carry the stress for them. And that's when the person decided to stop carrying it. After recognizing the cycle, the next crisis call came, just like always. But this time, the response was different. A calm voice, steady and unshaken. That sounds really difficult. No offer to rescue. No rushing in to absorb the panic. The friend, startled by the lack of instant help, asked, "What should I do?" Instead of solutions being handed over, the question was gently returned. "What are you thinking of trying?" For the first time, the responsibility stayed where it belonged. The friend had to sit with their own stress, handle their own crisis, and think through their own options. And surprisingly, they figured it out. They always could have. They just never needed to when someone else was carrying the weight for them. This is what real separation looks like in practice. They have a crisis, but you remain calm. They panic, but you stay grounded. They're stressed, but that stress doesn't spill into your system. They want something, but you no longer automatically provide it. You shift from "let me fix this for you" to "I'm sorry you're dealing with that." Acknowledging without absorbing, caring without carrying, compassion without drowning. You've been taking on their problems because you feel responsible for their well-being, because watching someone struggle makes you uncomfortable. And over time, they trained you to believe you were their only lifeline, using guilt whenever you didn't drop everything for them. But constant rescuing doesn't help anyone. It enables them, it weakens them, and in the end, it drains you. Epictetus taught the simplest, most liberating distinction. Some things are in your control, and some things are not. Their life is definitely not in your control, but your reaction to their chaos, that is entirely yours. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that every person has their own work to do in life, and your work is not solving someone else's existence for them. And Seneca warned against compassion that sweeps you away. You can care deeply without carrying another person's storm on your back. So the next time they arrive with drama, everything is falling apart, you remain still. I hear that you're stressed. When they say, I don't know what to do, you return the responsibility. What options are you considering? And when they demand, I need your help right now, the answer is steady and clear. I'm not able to help with that. That's the boundary. They can figure it out, or face the consequences of not figuring it out. Either way, it's not your burden anymore. Their life stays theirs. Your peace stays yours. These 7 principles naturally cause toxic people to distance themselves. Stop giving emotional reactions. Stop explaining and justifying. Become selectively unavailable. Stop defending yourself. Stop expecting they'll change. Stop seeking their understanding. Stop carrying their problems. Take away the fuel, your emotional energy, your explanations, your availability, your defenses, your hope, your validation, your labor, and watch them drift toward easier targets. Start with the principle you struggle with most. Maybe it's overreacting. Maybe it's whatever it is, practice that one during your next interaction. Stay calm even when they escalate, because they will test you. Marcus Aurelius taught that you have power only over your own mind, not external events. Their behavior is outside of you. Your response is entirely yours. Toxic people disappear when you stop feeding them. Stay stoic.